welcome to the Tabernacle Township Committee meeting, April 23rd, 2018. Please stand for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The meeting of April 23rd, 2018 was included in the list of notices sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and Courier Post, posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, and has remained continuously posted as required notices under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. I'm going to do the roll call. We have Ms. Brown. Mr. Franzen.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Yates. Mayor Barton.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, before we open up to public comment on agenda items, we are going to add Resolution 2018-57 to the agenda. There should be copies for the public over there. It's to authorize the placement of temporary signs in the public right-of-way for Tabernacle Rescue Squad for the annual open house and recognize National EMS Week, which is in May. So we'll add that to the end of the agenda. And at this time, we're going to open it to public comment on agenda items only. Anyone would like to speak on agenda items? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor Barton, professionals in that committee. I have a comment.
Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay.
Okay. Stuart Brooks, Morse Meadow Road. I have a comment on resolution 2018-56. That's the resolution that authorizes the sale by assignment of a tax sale certificate, essentially at an $8,000 loss for the township. And my comments and questions are these. One, I'd like to double check, and Mr. Lang, this is yours. Is it legal for the township to sell a tax obligation like this for less than full value? And I ask because at the discussion last meeting, there were casual comments made about how in Philadelphia they do it all the time. Obviously that's a different jurisdiction. And since taxpayers are taking loss, I'd like to verify that it's legal to do this.
Yeah, the statute is quoted there, and if they're going to sell it and accept bids for less than the full value, then the advertisement for such would have to indicate that as well.
Okay, thank you. Next comment, I know, and this also came up at last meeting, and it's also recited in the resolution, that this is an item that began in 2007, roughly 11 years ago, and from attending township meetings, I've seen it on and off the agenda for many years prior. So what I'd like to see from the committee when they entertain this resolution, or now if you'd like to address it, is how did we get to this point 11 years later that the taxes owing are so great that they cramp a real estate deal to such an extent that the township has to offer essentially $8,000 into the pot, an $8,000 discount, an $8,000 forgiveness in order to make this property liquid. How did that come to happen? And I know, Mr. Lee, you commented on it that this was on the agenda when you first took your seat. What did we do in the last 11 years that allowed this to snowball to this point? And the third question, which is related to the second, is what have been our transaction fees along the last 11 years to do what we've done with the property to get us to this point? So it's not just an $8,000 give back we're talking about, it's all the fees that have been part of the process of getting us to this point. Bottom line, it would seem to me, and I don't have the answer that you're going to give, but it would seem to me that at some point foreclosure should have been an option. rather than letting the taxes just roll on for 11 years. But that's what I'm looking to clarify, and that's what I'd like you to address with enough specificity that it makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Good evening, Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. Could you tell me when Powell Place Road was last paved? And was it fully paved? Was it partially paved? How much of it was paved? What years are we talking about when Powell Place Road was last done?
Okay, do you have any other questions?
I'd like to also pick up on the tax sales certificate as well. When the resolution 2018-56 was proposed, I know it was proposed by Mr. Franzen, and at that point, when he said he'd like to get this property back on the tax rolls, I think you also said, I know you also said, because I transcribed it word for word, that I understand what Peter's saying, but it's still a bit foggy to me. Now, if something's still foggy, it's clear, excuse me, that it wasn't that clear about the options and the options that the committee would take and the committee's actions since 2007. And so I'm not sure why a resolution would be put together so hastily when at least one committee person was foggy about the process. The other thing is that I want to clear up that I understand that there were problems with the people at this property, but having said that, and I am sympathetic to those problems that were discussed. However, the fact remains that it's not our job, it's nobody's job to it's not the taxpayer's job to subsidize those problems. If they had to go to the property, clean it up in order to sell it, those costs they should bear those costs. It's the taxpayers as a whole, should not bear the $8,000. That is really very wrong. Whereas they've had to know for years that there were problems there. The Longstreet sisters had to know about it. Where was their individual responsibility here? Instead, they come in, they ask those monies to be forgiven, and you just automatically go ahead and forgive them. There's no real discussion about, hey, what does this imply for the taxpayers? So if you're foggy, Mr. Franzen, you really should take a little time to clear up the fog. And I just don't see where you folks are taking individual responsibility either. It shouldn't fall on us to pay their dumpster fees, to cover their dumpster fees. Every other landowner in this township, if we had to do something, we would pay for our own dumpster fees. It's unfair for us to have this burden put on us. And this resolution shouldn't be adopted. I think you should put a little more time. You've already spent 11 years letting this cheese ripen. So why don't you just take maybe a few more weeks to really think through the process? So I would like to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Okay, we're going to close the public portion. Approval of the bills?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes. Okay, approval minutes for March 12, 2018. And everyone present can vote. That's for the workshop and the executive board. And also approval for March 26, 2018, regular and executive meetings. That's 4 sets of meeting minutes. March 12th, March 26th, both workshop and executive for the 12th, regular and executive for the 26th.
You want to do them all together?
Yes, unless you have questions on
No,
that.
that's fine. Mr. Franzen made a motion, I'll second.
Okay, roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton.
Yes.
Mayor, we're back in business.
Okay, proclamation for Building Safety Month. May of 2018 is Building Safety Month. And, you know, our construction department and the Department of Community Affairs and construction, most people don't think about them unless they need to put a building up or they want to build a new house, they want to do an addition, they need a permit, and there's certain codes and regulations. But I can tell you, having worked in the utility business for 48 years, electric utility business, and been around construction, if you look at the houses in today, they're much safer than they were in the past. That's because of the building codes. So the building codes are more stringent, and they address safety. And I'm sure we have the fire rescue company here that they'll tell you that there's probably significant less fires and problems with buildings because of the codes that we have in the state of New Jersey. So we're doing a proclamation, which I've already signed. I won't read it. It's quite lengthy, but basically it's because the month of May 2018 is Building Safety Month, and we're just recognizing that. Okay, municipal budget, resolution 2018-52, authorize a reading of title of 2018 municipal budget. Okay, we have a motion recognizing that two of the committee folks aren't here, but I'm not sure how far we're going to get with this today, but since our auditor is here, at least take the time to go through the budget and make some comments out of that.
Mayor, you want first and second for open discussion?
Yes.
I'll make it.
Okay.
Is this for the resolution, so your clerk doesn't have to read the budget in its entirety?
Yes, 2018-52, I made a motion. and Mr. Franson seconded.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Franson.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mayor Barton.
Yes. Okay, public hearing and comments on the municipal budget. Anyone from the public want to comment on the budget? Mr. Brooks?
Well, is there going to be a presentation? We've already asked a number of questions for the auditor.
Okay.
With all due respect, it might be helpful to have a
Yeah, let's hold this.
presentation that we could then ask more informative questions on.
We'll hold it till the end. Public comment?
Whatever you want. You want me to go over?
Yeah, let's go over the budget. We have our auditor here, and then let's have our discussion, and then the public can ask questions.
What you have before you is the 2018 municipal data sheet, which is our budget as it was submitted to the state. One of the first questions that we need to answer is how much, what was asked of us in previous meetings, how much surplus we should actually have in the budget. And we've been through a Moody's evaluation over our bond sale, and they gave us some direction on that, and Terry will fill you in on that.
Late this afternoon, we received a credit opinion from Moody's in reference to our bonds. And our rating was a A1. Now, upon talking to them, when we presented this to the Moody's person, you know, we were shooting for a double A rating. So everything looked good that we presented. The only problem is that our fund balance is too low. Now, they said it's really no fault of our own, we're just too small. So when I asked what is a good, you know, what fund balance could have put us over, they said anywhere from 3 million to 5 million. Those towns are at double A rating. The smaller towns that were all A1 ratings were around where we are now. So they said our fund balance relative to our cash that we have is actually pretty good, you know, for our size. But the bottom line is we're just too small for, you know, the higher ratings. So and that kind of boils down to the tax rate, not tax rate, the bond rate that we might get. If we were a little higher, then we could get maybe a couple basis points, but that's kind of what this all boils down to.
So Terry, our rating is A1, is that correct?
Our rating is A1. Just to give you an idea, the county rating is a AA, just because of the size of the county. So, in asking her about that fund balance, she said that they felt like if there were a major disaster, $1 million is kind of low for us to recover, and that's one of the criteria that they were looking at. With us being as small as we are.
Did they give you any goal for us to work towards?
No, she just said, that $3 million range, which is almost 3 times as much as we have, so, or unless there was a material growth in the tax base of the town, which is harder than the fund.
Rodney, you said over the last 5 years, we haven't changed sufficiently.
Your net valuation taxable in 2014 was $663,059,000, and 18 it is projected to be $663,054,000. So it's 5,000 less than what it was.
Don't anticipate a huge amount of growth.
You've had no growth at all. In fact, it's actually coming back to that level. You've dropped every year prior to this year.
So our overall budget is $4,377,562, which is about $100,941 over what it was in 2017. We did generate some additional revenue to put into the budget this year at $1,515,636, which is about $24,000 more than what we had the year before, giving us a net increase on local purpose taxes of around $76,466 over the 17 budget. The increases in the budget this past year, or this proposed for this year, are $10,000 for the public safety director, $10,000 additional for the fire company. Public Works overtime increase of $7,000. Fees and compensation in Public Works is $27,000, and that was for an outside contractor to do snow plowing. For most of it, there also will be some additional fees in there for an outside contractor to help us with the storm damage removal. Capital building project improvements is capital within the annual budget. Is up $17,500. Recreation is up $1,000. Construction is up $3,100, mainly due to the adding of the fire marshal's portion to that office. We expect income to offset that this year. Public Works equipment, we had an increase of $15,000 for current year capital expenditures on small equipment. And our group insurance went up $6,100, which is our health insurance. And included in this is a 2% raise for the employees. Basically where we are in this budget, going over line by line. we do have in our capital proposals for this year, we do have $1,365 proposed in the capital budget, and as you know, that's just a proposal. We will act on these separately based on what the committee wants to add to the capital budget. $1 million is towards the 2018 road program, or 2018 funded program, which will end up being the 2019 construction program if you go through with that. We looked at a utility truck or flatbed truck with a plow, fire chief's vehicle, pickup with a plow, some additional $180,000 SCBA and PPE for the fire company, and that's comes, like I said, a total of $1,365. So that's where we're at for our capital expenditures. There is included in there additional plans for the next 2 years after that as part of our budget requirements. Revenue remains pretty flat, doesn't it? So, as Terry's just confirmed, revenue remains pretty well flat between 17 and 18. Conservative approach. We hope to get, we anticipate getting more money through the fire marshal's office this year to offset some of those expenses. And so that's where we're at. Does any committee have any questions on any particular pages in the budget? Any particular lines?
How many consecutive years have we raised the tax increase? Have we had a tax increase in the budget? Anybody tell me that?
We had a 2-cent increase last year.
6 years.
6 years.
6 years since it's been flat.
Yes.
We've had a tax increase every year for the last 6.
Yes.
Some portion.
Well, probably 5. It's hard to determine because one was the revaluation year, so I'm not sure what happened there, whether that was actually a tax increase or because there was such a cut in the total net valuation taxable that there was obviously an increase to cover that.
Yeah, I forgot about the revaluation. So aside from that, we're looking at, so say 5 years.
Yes.
I'd like to get to a budget to where we have 0 tax increase this year. We have, the school district is about to do a presentation to the board, I guess next week, that they're going to increase their tax rate 2% because they can, because of the way the elections worked out. We don't have to have public approval for the budget anymore. So they're starting with a 2% increase every year. Part of the reason our taxes have gone up across the board is because of that. We're one of the lowest of the, out of all the Sunday districts, the Atlantic people were one of the lowest, if not the lowest, I believe. And I think we've done an awful lot in terms of managing our budget here and been smart about having increases periodically as we needed them. But 5 in a row is enough, as far as I'm concerned. So I'd like to see I'd like to get to a number where we have 0 tax increase. I also recognize the rating with Moody's. To be honest with you, A1 is not a bad spot to be in. And I don't know that, I'm not sure that we need to rest our laurels on that either. But I would like to see, I'd like to see us get to 0 tax increase for this budget. In fact, I'm not going to vote for a tax increase this year.
Okay, Doug, roughly you said this budget's up almost 77,000 over last year, right?
The net taxable, right.
So that, and I believe we said that's a penny?
Penny is around 66.
$66,305.41 if you really want to know.
That's pretty close to the number you gave me about an hour and a half ago. That's good.
So there's a couple ways you can do this. We can take some cuts out of the budget. And we can take some money out of surplus, which is the easiest for us to do, but we can still pass the budget.
No matter what your decision is, you're gonna give me like 15, 20 minutes to do some calculations so we get all the numbers exactly correct. The easiest would probably be all surplus.
Okay.
Then it would only be, on the appropriation side, it would just be changing the reserve fund like the taxing or whatever. That's going to be changed by the tax levy change.
We're not hamstrung to pass the budget tonight anyway. We don't have to pass the budget tonight.
What your requirements are for tonight is you need to hold the public hearing on the budget that was introduced.
Right, that's all, and we've done that, or we're doing that now. So we've already met that requirement.
No, you haven't had that public hearing yet.
Well, we're about to.
Then after that, then you make your decision on what you're would like to do. There is one budget amendment that's been proposed regarding gypsy calls, but if you're going to change the budget, then we'll hold off until that point in time as well. There's no reason to approve that. Yes, there's $5,000 that is getting
Has to be earmarked. Has to be earmarked for the state participation program.
They're not spraying much, but
No,
$5,000.
the spraying they're doing is not doing any good anyway.
Which, it's not going to change the total budget because the proposed amendment was just taking it out of your capital improvement fund appropriation. So the total budget is staying the same. But, like I said, if you're going to amend the budget, that amendment will just go in with whatever the number will be. If it's going to be amended.
Give you some suggestions if you want.
Does anyone on the committee have any suggestions of anything that's in the budget that we could look at to get that little over 66,000 down, which would get us at a zero increase for this year? We want to.
Well, how about Terry and Doug?
Yeah.
I mean, what can we take out? Going into surplus is an easy answer.
Yeah.
That's, we already know that. Let's do a little bit more work.
Still have capital funds available
Mayor, it may be easy. Terry and Doug are sharpening pencils. Might be a good idea to introduce or to take comments from the public because they could potentially be helpful in this process.
Okay.
It's a suggestion.
Okay, we're going to open this up to the public on the municipal budget hearing. Anyone from the public have comments on the budget? Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, working at Road. On the question of surplus, to the extent that I can, I'd like to hold the committee's feet and Mr. Haynes' feet to the fire here. Throughout this process and in years past, I've been asking how much surplus do we need. I still didn't hear an answer to that. The call for Moody's, though fortuitous in time, it came this afternoon, doesn't answer the question. The budget statement in the draft says it's been recommended that the township has small tax increases to continue growing our surplus. Who made the recommendation? I presume
I put
Haynes,
numbers, we do
you
have
might have better
independent,
hand in that.
we're the auditor, we're independent. We just put the numbers on a page, we just do what the committee and the administration have asked.
Here's the problem I have as a citizen, and I respect what you're saying, but these are a bunch of well-intentioned laymen, if I will, and if I may, as am I, in this budget stuff. I appreciate that it's good to have a surplus. I know what a surplus means for my accounts, but when I ask myself, all right, how much surplus do I need? I can come up, my wife and I come up with a rough number. We're dealing with a larger order of business with a township budget, which is $4 million. And every year we go through this charade.
Okay.
Because we're asking, how much surplus should we have? And every year I ask the person sitting in your seat, well, what do you recommend? And every year you or the person in your seat says, well, I can't recommend because I'm independent. So how do your clients have any idea how to organize their budget?
That is why we have the CFO.
Yeah, exactly. We have a CFO that answers that question. I think you ought to direct your questions not to Mr. Haynes, but to our CFO.
Well, I apologize then if I came up too strong, but I've been asking this question for a long time.
So you're asking the wrong guy. He's
All right,
down
well,
here.
Mr. Henry, it's your call.
So your question is,
How much surplus should we have? When it's said in the statement, we're recommending that we grow our budget, for what? $1 million, $5 million, a zillion million? And why?
we've been trying to keep it at roughly around $1 million. $1.2 million.
Okay, well, based on the chart that you issued some meeting ago, we're at maybe 600,000, I think.
No, that's how much we're using in the budget.
And the other column is the surplus. I don't think we've hit $1 million in a while.
Right, so I think we're at $1 million.
No, your unaudited, your annual financial statements show that you have available surplus of $945,000. You're anticipating in this 2018 proposed budget to use $672,000 of that to balance it.
So, in rough numbers, then that would leave a surplus of $300,000?
About $250,000.
$250,000? Okay, so we would then be...
But that's, okay, if everything happens, spend every dollar that's in this budget, and your revenues only come in at what's budgeted, you will be at $250,000 surplus. So then next year's budget, you will be $400,000 short.
Okay. Again, I do apologize for asking you pointed questions.
That's okay.
Let me move on because I know time is short. It seems there are a number of items that are consistently over budgeted. Some we pointed out in previous meetings. Another one that I'll point out is building and grounds. It's roughly $50,000 higher every year for the past 3 years than has been actually expended. That might be an area to look at. Let's see, I have one other comment. Look back and find it. Oh, on the capital plan. In 2019 and 2020, there's $5 million proposed. Is any of that money proposed for renovations at Town Hall or additions to Town Hall? And what renovations or what additions are proposed to Town Hall in that $5 million proposal?
Would you like to paint the carpets, sir?
I do like it. I do like it. I like it very much, actually.
I mean, what more do you want?
Well, if it cost $5 million, I'll tell you, I didn't like it that much. But it looks good. It's a nice improvement. But if we're talking about spending $5 million, I'd expect more out of it. And I want to know, what are your expectations for that $5 million?
That's fair enough.
You want me to answer?
Yes, sir.
The $5 million is out there as a long-range plan. There's nothing specific. We've talked about updating this building. We've talked about building somewhere else. We've talked about all that. It's just in there as a budget number because I have to project 3 to 5 years out. And given where we are with discussions back and forth with everything, it's out there as a number. When it gets anywhere close to being borrowed or that, there'll be a lot more discussion and a lot more direct planning of what we're planning to do with it and what the results are.
Understood, and that's fair enough. But I'd like to circle back to last meeting where this committee entered into a shared services agreement, and one of the reasons, given very generally and not explained, was, well, we don't have to put any improvements into this building. So if our capital budget for a year or two from now calls for putting money into this building, then that rationale gets a little thin and would need a bit of explanation to be supportive of the idea of having a shared services agreement for the municipal court. In other words, what was said to justify the shared services agreement doesn't quite match what's in the capital budget for 2019 and 2020. Maybe they do match, but based on just the information that's publicly available, which was very thin on the shared services agreement part, and what's available, what Mr. Kramer just said, it's hard to see how they match. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Bush?
Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. This last 5 minutes has been really interesting. Here we have Mr. Henry telling us that we really should have about $1 million in our surplus. We don't. At the same time, you're considering selling a tax sale certificate for $8,000 less to help people who really doesn't appear to take individual responsibility. There's money to be found, but you're not doing it. You're really not doing it. And for example, you can get rid of, you could save a half a penny in a bread. There is no reason that we should be making a contribution, and I said this at the last meeting or the meeting before, for those uncollected insurance billings. There's no reason why the squad can't make a good faith effort to collect them. It's legal to collect those billings, and if they can't get the money, then they can write them off. There's no reason why we have to keep paying that $35,000 and making that contribution. That should end tonight. It should end tonight. That's a half penny right there. Finding $31,000 is pretty easy. We're paying $200,000 a year for rent on that building, for that bond. Start charging rent. You could do this. You could put a resolution together in 5 microseconds, Mr. Lang could, and get that through at the next meeting to charge rent. You could pick up that $31,000 in a heartbeat. You've got your penny right there, right there. And it's as Mr. Brooks said, you know, there is a tight walk between expenditures and surplus. And maybe finding that sweet spot isn't that easy. But I don't think it's that hard. You've been doing budgets for how many years? And you should be able to balance the expenditures and the surplus. And really, really seek that sweet spot. But what we have is that when you look at line items, there's so many, you know, there are line items where, as Mr. Brooks said, that are $50,000 more than what was encumbered for the previous few years. Well, if that's the case, you can cut out some of that. There is money in that budget that can be cut out. Clearly, you have to make that balance and find that balance for the surplus, but nonetheless, Mr. Henry's shooting for $1 million. We haven't hit $1 million for 4 years or 3 years, something like that, and that was only the years when you took the money from the fire district. So there's money to be found in this budget. You just have to look at it and be honest about it. And there's so much money out there that's being forgone. And you know, I went through it at the last meeting. Farmland assessment. There are bona fide farmers, no question in this township, but there are people who should not be receiving farmland assessment. And you have an obligation to make sure, you and your assessor, to make sure that those people are not receiving farmland assessment. We live next to someone who should have never been getting it for the last 25 years. But fundamentally, the real truth is that there's money to be gotten. If you want to do your homework, go after that money. And even if you can't make that goal of the surplus, that $1 million, at least you've shown a good faith effort to collect the monies that you should collect to help all of us. You know, so I think it's out there. I think it's out there for the taking. You can go through those line items, slim them down. You can find a penny in a heartbeat, Mr. Lee. And I appreciate what you said at the beginning of this discussion about the budget, that you know you can do it and that you need to do it. The other thing is, I don't understand why you wouldn't be voting on the budget tonight. Can you explain that? I mean, you've got a quorum, so why not
Well, I
vote
think
on it?
what was said, we don't have to vote on the budget tonight. We could vote on the budget tonight. It's up to the three of us to decide
Okay,
whether we're going to vote on the budget tonight or whether we're going to extend it.
okay. Well, I don't know how much time they have to extend it. I don't know what the state deadline is. It's coming up, I know that.
Last week.
Next week.
Last week.
Oh, last week, okay.
The first meeting passed that deadline. It was
Okay.
Friday.
Okay.
The deadline to introduce it and to have a public hearing.
You
That
introduced,
deadline.
it introduced to approve the budget.
It doesn't have to be approved last week. It has to be introduced.
No.
Rodney, go ahead and take this.
The threat would be is you want to adopt your budget in a reasonable amount of time so it does not delay your tax bills going out in July. The more meetings you go before you adopt it, it will delay the actual tax bills getting sent out, which would then delay cash coming in to fund operations.
Got it. So I think with a little pen to paper, you can find that $66,000. You can try and find that nice line between expenditures and surplus, and keep working on it. And look at all of the situations in this township where money's essentially being given away. It's essentially being given away. You're subsidizing you're subsidizing those individual taxpayers or landowners who shouldn't be subsidized. And I think these are hard decisions, but I think that's what you're there to make. And as far as that $8,000 for dumpsters, it's dead wrong. It's wrong for us. It's wrong to put it on us. There's individual responsibility that's needed here, and it should be taken by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Anything else from the public? Okay, we're going to close the public portion.
Capital Improvement Fund. You can cut $35,000 out of the Capital Improvement Fund.
What page is that on?
There's the full budget, it's on sheet 26.
26? It's 75,000 right there. We were taking
Taking
5,000 out of that in the first amendment, page 26A. The 75,000, 5,000 of that was coming out in the amendment you already had before you tonight, being transferred over to the Gypsy Moth spraying program. That left you 70. You take a 35,000 out of that, leaving you 35,000. Left in down payment money, we have 66,000 as a rollover from the previous year. So we're still fine to finance the capital improvement program if you wish to go that way.
Or mandated to do the $5,000 for the state gypsum off? I mean, is
Yes.
that, why?
They require us to have that to participate in the program.
But if you don't have the, if they're not gonna, I mean, we know relatively 2 years out whether or not they're gonna actually have the need to spray in the first place. Why force municipalities to roll that over?
Because we're spraying this year.
I was gonna say, I think they've notified you that they're spraying this year, that's why you have to take.
I guess it's more of a general question, why, some municipalities will spray it, some are not, why force them to?
Because they've had they've had municipalities back out of the program at the last minute after the product's already been bought by the company that's spraying it. And
Okay,
this came about because that has occurred.
okay. That explains it then.
So, and now when you sign the second time up, you're required to pay the applicator at least for the product that was purchased. We have, let me find. Insurance. Workers' comp insurance.
Page on that.
On page 15. The rescue squad has offered to pay their insurance this year. I would be comfortable to take $10,000 out of that. Bill's slightly higher than I don't want to call it that close. So I don't have all our other insurances in at this point in time. I know our workman's comp and liability, but so reduce that by 10,000. And accept the offer by the rescue squad.
That's to continue under the JIF though, that's not, they're still covered under the JIF. They're just reimbursing us for the cost, is that correct?
Their reimbursements for the cost I have right now, I think, paying the cost, but that's the same thing as,
What about the in-kind donation of $35,000? Yeah, as I understand it, the idea was to drop that number as time went on, as the third-party billing got going. Where are we with that?
that depends on what each year, what the residents of Tabernacle use the service, and what that comes with. Last year it was 27,000 and some change.
27,523 according to those.
Okay. You could reduce it to that, but if it's over, you're going to have to come up with the money out of some other line item to pay it at the end of the year. So I left it at 35. We'll use whatever it is, and we'll put the rest towards surplus.
Well, there's a couple things we could do with that. We could take Mrs. Brooks' suggestion and let them send the bills and collect the bill from those that use the services. The other thing we could do is we have to enter into a contract, hopefully this year, for emergency services. And I would hope that if we did that contract, that there's substantial value in the value of that building in the form of rental. And that could be reduced through that rental cost, which Mrs. Brooks also talked about. I think we could safely take the $35,000 out and deal with it later. And either when we negotiate a contract, have it as part of the in-kind service that we're providing that value back to the squad through a reduction in rent or some other use, or make a decision and let them build the users of the service.
The $35,000 from the capital improvement fund, where does that put us with, and maybe I'm just speaking out of turn, but where does that put us with the improvements we've already talked about for the Pepper House?
That capital improvement fund is the down payment money on the current proposal for the next time we do a bond. The money for the Pepper House has already been borrowed in 2015 and 14.
So this doesn't affect that?
Doesn't affect that.
Okay.
It's just down payment money.
Okay.
And we have some carryover down payment from previous years that I can cover the cost of the down payment for the proposed capital expenditures this year. If you're going to take that 35,000 out, then that needs to be stated, and it needs to be passed on to the squad. They've gone through part of a year right now where they haven't balanced billed. I recommend that you at least cover that, whatever point you're going to do for the residents of Tabernacle. If you're going to stop paying that, then you're going to deal with some of the more frequent flyers that use the service will have a fairly large expense, but it's certainly your prerogative to do that.
Well, you're not suggesting take it out altogether, I think, are you? You're suggesting to take it off the budget line item, but as we get into the,
You take it off.
as we get into the contract portion, I'll be looking to essentially go back in another direction,
If you take it off the budget, it's gone. If you wait to negotiate a contract, then you can talk about, we pay for the balance billing and charity care on this side, and if you want to talk about rent on the other side to offset a portion of that, that needs to be done in the contract, and we count that as revenue. But if we take it out...
That's what Joe's suggesting.
Yeah, but you can't take it out of the budget tonight if you don't do it that way. You know.
So where are we at, Rodney, 80,000? That's the number I got. Between the 35 from that Joe suggested and the 10, and then the other 35 from capital.
But you just talked about that
you can't
35, you
take
can't
that
take that
out.
out. Not, and then negotiate later. If you take the line item out, you don't have it available.
You don't have it available, and you don't have, I mean, I'm assuming...
Hey, we understand what the 35, we understand what taking out $35,000 is from the rescue squad. We don't need to go back and forth about it. We know what it means.
Okay,
But what I'm wondering is what our number is. We at 80,000 at this point?
you're at 45,000 without taking that out. If you're
So
going to
then you would be at 80,
Okay.
yes.
And 66 is the number we're looking for? 66?
Approximately. It's going to change because changing your tax levy is going to change the reserve for uncollected taxes appropriation.
66,351.
That is what 1 penny is worth.
Okay.
You could take the $10,000 that the fire companies requested back out of their budget and go back to 106 if you wanted to. You can talk about trash. We could cut 5,000 out of trash if you wanted to.
The trash company, we have a set amount with the contract.
We have a set amount with the contract, it's below the amount we have, but our variable in there is tonnage,
Okay,
because we pay the disposal fee,
okay.
so that's the variable.
That's to cover the disposal fee then.
Yes. So, I have a cushion in there, based on last year's or what we paid. Few large trash days and we can use that up. And doing that, but I feel comfortable taking 5,000 back out and leaving it at 420. given what we're spending right now on improvements in town hall, I was trying to spend them out of current budget where we can, and capital where it's a larger project. I'm not real comfortable taking a lot out of that, but I have a large item in that I could take probably 10,000 out of buildings and grounds.
Line item transfers are November, is that right?
Yes. We can reduce the 143 to 133. So that gives you 60, that gives you 60,000. That leaves you 6,000 or 7,000 of surplus.
That's, with your 60,000, that's not affecting fire or the rescue fund.
Right. If you want to affect both of them, I can. I can take 7 out of the fire, and we can negotiate for the other. Or we can leave it alone and take the 6 out of it. Take 7 out of the surplus. However you want to get to it.
Are we running a tally sheet somewhere that has our cuts, or, I mean, who's doing the sheet? Is anybody doing the sheet?
You gotta tell me,
No, I know, I understand that. Is any, what do you have so far?
I think we're down to 6,000.
I have
I wanna know where we are, 'cause I'm not.
you're using 35,000 capital improvement fund.
Right,
Insurance was 10 grand.
okay.
Trash was 5 grand. Public buildings was 10 grand. That totals 60,000. Other things that got thrown out on the table was fire and rescue.
What's the
Or the
building, what's a
surplus.
10,000 building, what are we losing by cutting $10,000 out?
We'll cut it out of electric.
We shut the lights off?
Yep.
No, not out of paying the electric bill. I don't know. Electrical improvements
The electrical improvements to the building?
to the buildings, yeah.
That's your mark for?
Some of it was, yeah.
And Ronnie, what was the 5,000 for?
Trash.
Trash.
How are we getting away with that?
My expenditures last year were less than the
Okay.
earmarked amount. But like I said, the variable is the tonnage that we generate. And the options you have were to take some out of fire increase or take it out of surplus.
Mr. Mayor,
TFC requested the increase though.
116, yes.
What do they want? Or were we?
We're 106.
Oh, that was on that list, never mind,
Okay.
sorry.
because that would help you balance your budget. We also planned more fundraisers this year, so by all means, that would help you.
For the record, that was Dave Smith, Fire Chief, Tabernacle Fire Company.
I recommend you only take the 6, not 10. It doesn't touch their 90,000, they get it correctly. That would give it an increase of 4 over what they had last year.
So Doug, on the Tabernacle Rescue Squad, you said they've already had billings for 4 months, right? Which is about a third of what they usually use. And I agree, you can't go back on that, but I think there is an opportunity for us to negotiate a contract for those services, and I think we add great value with what we provide to them. And I think there's more than enough to cover that. And I'd like to see us take that 35 and reduce it by about $25,000, which gets them covered for the first quarter. And, you know, I think we get our public safety director in place. We need to negotiate and get a contract for emergency services. And I think we can roll this into that. If they're going to be the provider of our emergency services, they're sitting in a building that's worth over $3.5 million, and we're not collecting a dime rent on that building.
Okay, so as I understand this, so the payment back and forth is not an option on the thing. You want to take away the support for in-town residents of the balance billing and the charity care.
What was the amount for the fire?
And what I'm saying is that I think we could say that we've made a contribution to them in excess of $35,000 just in the value of the building that there's value in that building.
I may need a legal opinion
Okay.
whether that pushes itself towards the anti-kickback portion of the federal law, whether we should pay and then ask for money back in the contract for that kind of money. Is that safer than saying we're doing it in kind? Because I'm not sure that meets the anti-kickback standard.
I haven't looked in this in a while. I know that there was an issue over an in-kind contribution, whether or not, the question is, can an in-kind contribution in that way defray the costs that are incurred by the failure to collect the balance billing from the residents. And if the township was to make that contribution, does that then satisfy the requirements of the anti-kickback statute? So ultimately, is providing the building an in-kind contribution that substitutes for, cash or direct support. I think we looked at that a couple of times, but it's been a long time, and I just don't know what my resolution on that was. I think I provided those opinions in the past. I have that information available to me, but I haven't looked at it in a long time, so I'd like an opportunity to look at that. So if that's the specific question is, does the provision of the building constitute an in-kind contribution that would satisfy the township's obligation to make a contribution to the squad if they're going to balance, if they're not going to balance bill, if they're going to fail to balance bill?
And if the answer to that's negative, then why not have a contract that says, you will pay us this number of rent for the building, and then we'll leave the $35,000 in there if we collect the rent, just give them what they need, not the balance bill. Or, as some municipalities around us, we wouldn't be the first one, balance bill. There are towns that do balance bill. They tell them to send the bill and put the onus on them to collect it. I'm not saying that that's the way I want to go. I'm just saying we have to look at all the options that are available to us.
What was the amount that we were able to go down to for the fire company?
I think we got to 66.
So 6,000 was coming off the fire company, out of 116 down to 110, and that gave us our 66,000
Okay.
without touching the 35.
Do you want to leave, if you go to if you suggested going to 25, do you want to leave the 10 in there to cover the insurance? That's a big hit for the squad. If you were to take 25 for the balance billing piece of it, plus the 10,000 for the insurance, that's a $35,000 hit. Do you want to leave the 10,000 where that is and pull it from the trash tonnage and the reduction for the fire company, as Doug suggested and David mentioned, that they're going to do more fundraisers, so we'll be bringing money in from that avenue? Is that more palatable?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is leave as much of the 35 in as possible for the squad, but negotiate a contract with them and have a chance to recover those amounts to a contract. If that's the way we avoid a RICO statute, if that's possible.
A number that's equivalent to what your balance bill number is, which is 20.
At least, yeah. I'm going to say, we already had a public discussion on this.
Okay.
Okay.
This is not open to the public discussion's done.
I just thought he might have a comment similar to what Dave had.
Okay. Did you want to make a quick comment, Chief?
Chief George Jackson, Tabernacle Rescue Squad. Just so you understand, there's reference to the $35,000, is there's a lot of moving parts to it. There was an OIG opinion that was done that says how we do the billing. And that all has to be investigated and done. The squad has committed to paying for that insurance and will gladly pay for that insurance. And I understand you want to negotiate a contract, and that's fine, but just understand that there's a lot of moving parts, and it's not just as simple as some people say that you can just balance bill the residents, or we can just write things off, or we can do all that. It's not that simple. So I just wanted you guys to understand that just taking the money away, that changes things, because our OIG opinion says it's you get reimbursed, or we have to balance bill everybody, every resident. And that means, and I don't even know that we can split it part of the year, quarter of the year. I don't know that we can even do that. So that means if it's taken out before we figure it all out, we're going to have to go all the way back to January and start balance billing the residents, because we can't do anything illegal, because then it would cause you guys basically to be causing something that's illegal. So we committed to paying the insurance. We'll be more than happy to do that. That's why we did that last year. I understand, if you want to negotiate a contract or something or discuss things of that nature, that's fine, but if we take that money out now, that's gonna create issues. We need to actually, there's a lot of work that has to be done. We spent a lot of time and money to get that OIG opinion, and you're probably gonna have to do it again to do it. So, just so that you're aware.
Okay. Well, as I understand it, if we take the money out, you have no choice, but you have to balance bill, right? Because
Yeah,
Short of an OIG opinion, but the OIG opinion that they got some time ago was based on the structure that was presented when, and actually Pete and I talked about this. And George is right, you've got to have the OIG opinion is based on the information that's provided to them. If we present them a different structure of how they're going to be compensated to avoid balance billing the residents, then they give another opinion. It's as simple as, in my opinion, yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but it's relatively.
Yeah, they render an opinion based upon the facts that are presented to them, and that doesn't mean that that decision hasn't been met, issued in respect to another relationship where you could draw an analogy. I don't know, and I know that we looked at this specific issue, and whether or not in-kind contributions would satisfy that burden in order to allow them to not balance bill and be consistent with the requirements of the anti-kickback statute. And I think I looked at this before and I provided a detailed analysis, and my recollection is that, sitting here today, my recollection is that there wasn't a specific opinion that indicated that an in-kind contribution would constitute that value, but the opinions were replete with a reference that, that logic would support that. So I don't know, whether or not there's an actual opinion in that regard. But George is right in that if there was an opinion that was exactly on point, you wouldn't be certain as to how that would be viewed without an OIG opinion.
The issue is with the OIG is even if you have a similar municipality, similar situation, you can't use that as your basis. You actually have to go and get your own approved. So even if we find one that's similar, if you don't and something goes wrong, you can't fall back on that opinion because it's not yours. You have to have your own, and that's why we spent the time and the money to have our own.
thank you. Deb, last year you said the number was 27 reimbursed.
27, some change.
So if we took 5 out, we left 30 in. That gets us to our penny, Stephen, and we can deal with that opinion at a later date.
We're already to our opinion, if you want to take that out.
Pardon me?
We're already to our opinion, but we can take that out. 6 from the fire company got us to our opinion without touching surplus.
Okay.
So exactly where are we going? We're going with capital improvement fund,
35.
35,000. Was liability insurance, was it?
Workman's comp,
Workman's comp,
10,000.
10,000.
Trash, 5,000. Buildings and grounds, 10,000.
You're going, well, that's the 60, so then you're doing what from the fire?
6. And 5 from
And 5 from the rescue. Okay.
71.
71.
The workers' comp 10,000, is that the 10,000
That's the insurance.
insurance from the rescue squad?
The big concern is going to be next year, if we have 250,000 in surplus at the end of this, right? And we're taking 672 out of surplus. And next year, we're going to have $250,000 in surplus
Yeah,
with no opportunity to use surplus towards the budget at all.
that's right, if you spend the full extent of the budget, right now.
That's why we try not to spend the full extent of the
Right.
budget. And our revenue numbers, hopefully, it's why we don't want your revenue numbers exactly where they were the year before.
Where do you think we're going to be next year if it's not done there? I mean,
We've been this way before.
it's really tight because if you do expend the whole budget, then next year you're probably looking at a sizable tax increase.
That's,
Right, you're looking at, let's say, you know,
if you were to spend your entire budget and you did not get any more revenue than what you anticipate, and you have in your budget, you will have around a $400,000 void to make up with the taxpayers.
and that's 400,000 is 5 cents, right?
In Doug's defense, though, as the budget gets written, he's, I don't want to use the word padding, because that's not really the right word, but he's on top of managing the expenditures to the point where he doesn't put himself in that position, where he's expending to the very tail end. He doesn't put us in that position, which is, I mean, it's a lot of,
It's a lot of saying no at the end of the year. But
yeah, and I mean, there are the transfers we have, yeah, and there's some transfers we've done.
Right?
yeah, we have,
You're managing risk.
we're managing risk, and we've not had a great spring as far as, or late winter, early spring, as far as snow. We have spent close to our 95,000 in soil and calcium purchases this year. Now, some of it was purchased last year, a portion of it was in this winter season. We did buy some in December to try to offset some of that. But, yeah, if I have a bad November and December again, we're going to be closer. We try to manage that as well as we can. We always have, projects that we need, projects that we want, and we think would be benefit to the residents, and sometimes we can't always get to them based on what our requirements are based on weather and the safety of our residents. So the years we can, we do, and the years we can't, we try to pinch where we can.
So Stephen, we just went through an exercise to get a penny down. I did hear you say, and none of us are in favor of raising taxes, but is it a better philosophy to raise taxes incrementally over a long period rather than get hit?
I've always said that.
Yeah.
I've always felt that.
We dealt with this before, right? We had a stretch before I had come on this committee where it was a zero tax increase for many, many years. And we had to take a hit to get where we needed to be. And so is it easier to just go up, even though we've made some cuts, to go up a penny or two and put it aside so that next year, if we have a good year, great. If we don't, it's not as painful next year or the year or a year after that. It's not an easy decision. It's all about managing risk, and a lot of our risk, as you heard Doug say, is weather related. What's the weather going to do to us?
We didn't plan on this being a heavy brush season based on what we had, except for the 2 snowstorms, 3 snowstorms in March that brought down a lot of trees. And a lot of branches, and,
It affected a lot of us.
you know, if we were where we were in February with the 70-degree days we had in February, I thought we were going to have a great spring, but March came back to bite us.
Okay, we done with our discussion on the budget? If so,
Bonnie should have some figures for you.
Barbie done?
Couldn't take me, you might as well continue with your meeting. 'Cause I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Because I have to put a whole new resolution together for you.
You'll be putting a whole new resolution together based on those cuts.
We don't have to, and we don't have to vote on it tonight. I keep saying that, but we still don't have to vote on it.
So far, you haven't done, any of the changes you proposed would not require another public hearing
Right,
on an amendment.
right.
You haven't added a line item, you're just reducing ones that are,
But we still need to have a hearing on the gypsy one.
no,
Okay.
small enough that it's not required. If that was the only thing you were doing.
Okay, we move on to the budget amendment, which is resolution 2018-53.
That's, the budget amendment's gonna change, because it's gonna get all incorporated in one. If you're doing these changes that you just discussed,
Okay,
we might go incorporate all in one.
so we can do that next meeting, right?
You can,
It would put a smile on his face, because
Okay. Okay.
he can get work.
I won't have to cram so much, but
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd excuse Rodney. So we'll see you in May. We're making work for us.
Do you need the capital next?
Any further discussion before we close this and move on to old business? Rick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah.
And professionally, anything to add before we move on? Rodney, you okay?
I'm okay. I have my marching orders.
Okay.
So you're gonna table the budget amendment and then, and also the budget resolution, is that correct? And then do that in May.
Correct.
So you need a motion to table those and move that to the May meeting.
Okay, motion to table resolution 2018-53 and the adoption of the 2018 municipal budget resolution until the May meeting. Motion,
So moved. Second.
roll call.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, old business, second reading ordinance 2018-1, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and establish a cap bank under NJSA 40A:4-45.14.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Public hearing.
We'll take public comment on the ordinance 2018-1, calendar year 2018, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Anyone from the public like to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Roll call.
Mr. Francis?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, second reading ordinance 2018-2, an ordinance of the Township of Tabernacle amending Chapter 4, General Licensing of the revised Township Code of Ordinances with respect to bingo and raffle licenses.
So made the motion. Franzen made the motion, Lee seconded.
Thank you.
Any discussion required? Basically, this just gives our municipal clerk the authority to issue those licenses in the future, so you don't have to come before the board.
Yeah, we can carry.
I'm sorry, yeah, we're going to open this to the public. Anyone from the public Want to talk about this ordinance? Okay, seeing none closed, roll call.
Mr. Franson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2018-54, approving a raffle license application for the Church of the Holy Eucharist.
So moved. Second.
Peter, you want to go over?
On the record, we would invoke the rule of necessity to the extent that the committee members are conflicted. It's a local church and parishioners would have arguably a personal interest, but it's such a matter of such local affairs and the board would otherwise be paralyzed, so we would invoke the rule of necessity and ask everyone to vote on such a resolution.
Roll call?
Mr. Franson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, resolution 2018-55, award a contract for the ESB radio tower installation, contract number TAB 2018-1. Motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Guzzi, we're going to go over the bids on this?
Sure. We received 4 bids for the project. This is to install the 2 radio towers and associated antenna and cabling at the emergency services building. There was one issue with the second low bidder. There was some deficiencies in his bid. However, the low bidder, their bid was sufficient and came in at $94,249. The next low bid was 100, the next was 106.5, and the final bid was 120. So the bid numbers look good, and their bid was qualified.
Look reasonable to you, then?
Yes.
Confident they can do it for the bid amount?
I certainly hope so, and they're going to place a bond that says they can.
Okay, good. Okay, roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Franson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2018-56, a resolution authorizing the sale, tax sale certificate.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I've got a question.
Yes.
I just need to find the form. I've got one of those. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. We're going too fast. I just want to make sure I understand something. This, we had a lot of public comment on this, which I certainly appreciate. And one thing I wanted to make sure I understood was that the tax sale certificate number 707-407 was for all of 2007 and 2008. And it was sold to Heartwood 55 LLC in Fort Lauderdale, is that right?
Correct. It was sold by assignment to them, which means the township already got that money.
Okay.
All right, so the township has an outstanding tax sale certificate number 7 from 2007. We collected that money. They stopped paying the subsequent taxes, haven't acted on that, but it's out there. And whether or not they could seek a redemption is questionable at this time, but that's out there. And then there's an additional, because the taxes didn't continue to be paid, there's the subsequent lien 2009-6, which is for the subsequent taxes up through the first quarter of this year, in the amount of 38,000, or excuse me.
350.37.
Correct, 46,350.37. The total lien on the property would be 56,960. If you include that $10,000 tax lien that's out there, and again, the statute indicates that if they don't continue to pay the taxes, they lose their priority. And I think if they wait 2 years or more to foreclose, they could have trouble there. But that's still out there. So the only one the township has to sell is the 46,350.37, which is all the subsequent taxes.
So the other tax sales certificate is owned by Heartwood 55. Is that correct? Okay. That's all I have, man. Thank you.
Okay. And the only comment I want to make on this is, while we did reduce this amount, it's going out to bid, and someone may pay more. So it's going out for a competitive bid, and hopefully someone will pay more. If not, you know, it'll get this property off the table here. As far as your question, Mr. Brooks, about 10 years ago, unfortunately, I can't answer that question of why that piece of property sat here for so long and wasn't dealt with. It does look like it was dealt with in other years through some of these tax sales, right there.
We have done through tax sale. We started in court a number of years ago with the son lived in the next house next door. He lost that in the tax sales and stuff. She passed away. He moved into the mother's house. Went through a period of time where we had promises that it was going to be cleaned up and it was going to be put back on record. We went through the court process, which is quite lengthy and does not always result in a final restitution of what was owed. The gentleman had some issues, health issues, with a combination of that, and we kept extending. The judge kept moving the court proceedings down the road, but it takes months and months and months. We get a judgment. The judgment isn't paid. We start the process over again, and that's been where it has. And he did get a little better health there for a short time, and started to make an effort to clean up the outside and deal with that, which was the main complaint we had from the situation was that. We looked at closing in on foreclosing on the tax lien a couple times and taking the property, tearing the house down, and clearing the property and using it for drainage of some type. But that got to be more and more expensive. It was somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 was estimated to take the house down. So we would have lost the taxes plus the cost of tearing the house down and doing that. But we've done that in other situations, and it's where we were headed with this. We had him back before the court again, and then unfortunately he passed away. So that's sort of how it drug on longer than if you just look at it now. It looks like it's been a long time in that, but
It sounds like 10 years is a long time, but what the committee has to recognize is that the township doesn't normally consider foreclosing on tax liens until they're at least several years old, because the amounts just don't justify it. Plus the process is to be self-correcting in that regard, the marketplace coming in and paying for those and properties that are actually worth something, okay? So it sounds like it's an extended period of time, but you're going to go through several years of time before the township committee, even or the manager or the CFO wants to talk about a tax foreclosure. Then you have to look at the relative value of the property, whether or not that process is going to result in a net positive. You have to look at environmental conditions that could be affecting the property. You have to look at occupancy issues. The fact is that Ms. Longstreet was in poor health. She was in poor financial condition for many years, many decades. It was a classic situation where the property deteriorated over time. Her health and her existence and her occupancy there deteriorated over time. Every time Bob Perry would get to the point where he was going to make something happen, there'd be promises from the family, promises that they would clean the property, there'd be incremental progress. So of course the township committee and the township administrator doesn't want to be heavy-handed, so they respond to that, they allow more time to go by, and by that time, it was to the point where, okay, finally we're in court, ready to get her out of there, no more excuses, no more delays. We go through the Superior Court process to a degree, and she passes away. Okay, so on some level that resolves the issue. Well, then the promises come, they're going to go ahead and fix up the property. The son's going to come in, and he's going to take care of it, and he's going to turn it around. He's going to try to catch up the taxes. And it turns out, well, he's essentially, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, and he had his own issues with financially, health-wise, taking care of the property, incrementally making progress, to satisfy code enforcement, to get some more time. And then he passed away, and then the estate went through that and started cleaning up, and we gave them time for that. So, you know, it sounds like a very long period of time, but it's really not, and it's, you know, it's not a circumstance that doesn't recur with some frequency in every town. And so here we are at the end of the road here, where all these taxes haven't been paid. The property is in an exceedingly dilapidated and poor condition. It arguably isn't worth anywhere near the assessment. That's another issue. You know, they're not appealing that tax assessment as the property continues to be dilapidated. So, you know, is the value of your tax lien really meritorious from a value standpoint? You know, could they have gotten reductions? You know, should the taxes have been reduced? Arguably, that's the case because they can't sell it for anything close to the assessment. And here we are, we have the estate that wants to basically walk away even though they made some investment in the property to an attempt to mitigate the conditions out there, largely being sensitive to the township and the neighbors out there. And you have a buyer that wants to come along but can't satisfy in their mind from a market standpoint the total tax levy and still have enough VIG to invest in the property, get it turned around and productively reused. So the statute does allow the committee to advertise and indicate for those such reasons to develop some creativity, as the statute says, or the legislative notice, to, you know, collect some money, maximize what it can get, and put the property back to productive use. And so what you can do is you can pass this resolution tonight if you'd like. You can fiddle with the numbers. You can pass it as it's written, which would be an $8,000 reduction on the overall levy, not taking into account that $10,609 of that has been paid to the township and then somebody else owns it, as a way of inducing them to go through a sale. Or you can change the numbers. In any event, though, if you're going to accept less, you have to say tonight that you're going to accept less. You can establish a not less than number. Okay, you can bring in bids higher than that. The township subsequently will have to come to another meeting and pass another resolution and accept or reject whatever happens. So you'll have this decision to make again based on real numbers that yielded from the sales, whether you actually want to accept it now and go forward, or whether you want to reject it and do something else. That would be your right. And so that would be the next step after this is advertised and conducted as a public sale.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for that. And the other thing I look at is that not only is it going to be competitively bid, that if we were not to take action on this property, and the heirs were to walk away from this piece of property, in all likelihood, we would be in foreclosure. We'd be spending $15,000 to demolish this house, but
Yeah, in that neighborhood.
so on top of the taxes that we didn't collect, we would have another investment of $15,000 for a piece of property that, how much is the ground worth on the property? $20,000? I don't know.
We were going to keep it and use it as part of our drainage improvements on the
Okay.
way.
And the buyer should understand that if they buy this tax sale certificate, they have to foreclose potentially on that lien, and that could be required, or they could negotiate with the property owner to take a deed in lieu of foreclosure and do a private transaction at that point. If they weren't able to come to terms and they bought the tax sale certificate, ultimately they could have to foreclose on that if they can't get a deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Okay. Gary, you go with Gary?
No, I think the only thing I want to note, I mean, not all of that money is tax money. A lot of it is interest when we're paying 18% or whatever it is a year. I mean, we're not losing all tax money when we talk about that. It's, a small part of that money is
So
real
if they have
tax.
paid their taxes every year, this number is significantly higher.
Yeah, because of the interest.
The other way to look at it is, what if you do nothing? What's going to happen?
I think that's what Jim was just saying. What would happen?
And that's not good for the neighborhood. Deputy Mayor, any comments, Steve? Okay, we had a motion, we had a second, we had a discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Franson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, resolution 2018-57. It was not on the agenda, but we did add it. We did have copies for the public. It's an authorized authorizes the placement of temporary signs in the public right-of-way for Tabernacle Rescue Squad for their annual open house to be recognized National EMS Week. And I'll just read a little bit about this because everyone is invited. The week of May 7th to promote their upcoming annual open house in recognition of May 20th to 26th as EMS Week across the nation will take place on Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018, between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. at the Tabernacle Rescue Building. So I believe all the public's invited, correct, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It'll be advertised more shortly.
Okay.
We're just getting set up.
So this resolution is so they can put the signs out there for that. For the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any
Why don't we
discussion?
get this last minute, Bob? Why don't we just get this today?
Steve?
Quite frankly, I had a lot of your son's stuff to grade with my other students, and I thought about it last night in an ambulance at 11:30 coming back from boarding. So I said, they're going to a one-a-month May meeting. I don't have that first May meeting, and I caught, and LaShawn was nice enough to take that at 7:30 when I emailed it to her this morning.
I'm not sure my son has anything to do with it, but that's,
I'm
but thank you.
just saying, I've got a lot on my plate, and I apologize for not getting to it, but I forgot that you were going to a once-a-month meeting format May onward, so I thought I had another meeting before, and I do not.
Thank you for your honesty,
Duly noted.
Mr. Kramer.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Franson?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Old Business Subcommittee, Public Safety Director and Office of Emergency Management.
Joe and I will likely have candidates for consideration by the committee at our next meeting for both for the PST anyway. The OEM was a middle appointment anyway.
Right.
But we should have that decision made by the end of, if not the end of this week, or very beginning of next week, and I'll communicate that to you at that time.
Okay. Peter, with that, as the Deputy Mayor said, it is the Mayor's appointment. Can I make that appointment during the week? Does it have to be at a formal meeting? The concern is we have two folks interviewed, right, Steve?
We had a couple others we're considering, but it's down to two at this point.
Okay.
Your appointment is effective immediately, and it's memorialized through the resolution.
Okay, so if I make the appointment, that person is appointed from that point on, and then we'll memorialize it at our next meeting? Correct. Okay. The concern is that if that person that we select is available, there is a New Jersey Emergency Preparedness Conference next week that we would like to get that person enrolled into. Stephen, if there's any way I could get a name by Friday, and then Rick, I'll be happy to share it with you and Kim and see if we can get, even though it's the Mayor's appointment, I would like to get a consensus of the committee that everybody's comfortable with who the subcommittee is going to recommend.
Thank you.
Okay. Chief Financial Officer's applicants, LaShawn had advertised for CFO, and the deadline was Friday, and there are, I believe, 18 or 19 applicants in this package. And what I'd like to do is get a subcommittee to take a look at these. And I know she's not here tonight, but Mrs. Brown had indicated that she would like to be part of that, and I'll contact her and see if she's still willing. Would one of you like to review these with Mrs. Brown?
Honestly, Joe, I'm going to be out of town.
Okay, no problem.
For about 3 or 4
Okay.
weeks, so.
I'll do it.
Okay, those two, okay. I'll leave these with you, and I will call her and let her know that you have these. These are the
Do you want
submissions.
a copy we have? Leave that one there for Kim, she can get allocated this one.
Of course.
This one was mine, right? I've already read them all.
I'll give you a copy.
Here's a copy for you.
Kim.
You got Kim's.
Well, she's got them.
Thanks, Doug.
You're good?
I'll make sure she gets it.
Yes, you will.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
I'm sure Mr. Henry will be available to comment on the applications. Okay, proposed 2018 road program. You're up on that one.
Okay. What was in your packet was the proposals for the 2018 road program, which is using DOT grant money for Carranza Road, starting at Tuckerton Road and proceeding towards Moore's Meadow until the funds run out. I did get a phone call today from the 8th District Legislative Office about setting up a meeting to meet. I did have some discussions about where that jurisdiction changes. This grant should get us very close to where that jurisdiction changes. Not where they always had responsibility to, but where it's within the state forest at that point in time. She wants to set up discussions with both the 9th and the 8th District and the state, and see if we can work through that to proceed.
Whose idea is to stop it, though?
That was just a thought of where the next section would be.
Whose thought was it on this?
Discussion, I guess, came out of discussion with the administrator in Chemung and myself over what that cost would be to get to that. They thought that that would be an incentive for the state to maybe kick some money in if we at least got to that.
Because it leaves the remainder of it that hasn't seen top coat.
Yes, it does.
And that's including the bridge, which is suspect at best at this point.
The bridge should be a county responsibility.
That's my point. Why not go at least, I mean, why not, if we're going to go through this whole process, why not do it to where it stops now? Why don't we do to the...
We can.
Why don't we do to the...
We can. It was just a number that's where they thought they could get. They didn't think they could get enough money to go all the way, to be honest. Is what the thought is let's get it in small chunks and then you go back and ask for it again.
I got the correspondence today from Chemung. I did talk to Mary, the scheduling secretary down tonight. I talked to her maybe Friday of last week, and she was supposed to talk to the delegation at some point. Beginning, I think it was today actually, they were going to circle back the delegation and they know what we're trying to accomplish. So that conversation is probably going to happen relatively soon between the 9th and the 8th.
We can put that number together to go the rest of the way?
Well, my point is that I think we've got a lot of leverage with going to Costello Prep, but my point is that you're going to leave the rest of that undone, and at some point, someday, someone's going to have to fix it. So do we just, do we ignore it until that falls apart? And then
Yeah, I think we do it in sections. And I think we bring them the number all at one time now.
So Doug does.
Well, I think you need to do my opinion is you need to do the whole thing that's entirely to the railroad tracks. Start there. And then work your way back from there if you have to. But I think it's irresponsible to do it just to a certain spot and stop.
You have the line.
Especially when you have, if I could finish, especially if you have the 8th and the 9th and Chemung and Tabernacle having to get to the table in the first place. The only way that road ever gets paved from the bridge down the railroad tracks is by going through the same process we're going through right now. So my point is, why reinvent the wheel twice? Let's just do it once, at least have a number to get us to the railroad tracks.
Okay, not a problem.
So help me understand, the railroad tracks, that's state property though?
Yes.
Okay.
It's state property past,
What's the gun club that's there? I want to say Wilkinson, but that's not right.
is it? It's Wilkinson.
So are we saying
Just
that,
past Wilkinson state
are we
property.
saying that between Tabernacle and Chemung, we can get the state property through some type of agreement that they would pay half, we would pay half?
Well, right now, our grant is approved, and we'll go as far as we can. I'm not sure we'll get quite all the way to that, but yeah.
Okay. And then they would pick up the next phase, basically they would do up to state property, is that what they're saying?
They're not saying anything, that's what they're trying to get at, them is them to pay the state portion of the road
And then I
inside
guess-
the state forest.
And then we're getting the 9th and 8th to get leverage to get all the way? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, it's state property anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, at some point, the state's gonna have to pay the road.
yeah.
My point is, why not present them the whole card, not just 3 tires? I mean, that's my point. Why not present them the whole shoot match?
Well, today I had a discussion with one of the governor's aides about this project, and she wants to get involved in it. And so maybe we can get leverage between the 9th and the 8th in the governor's office
We can use the monument also as a,
to get the state portion taken care of.
It's irresponsible if we don't.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from a long-term standpoint. I remember that road was all dirt, and I'm looking at it from a long-term perspective.
Okay. So I'm going to get her in the mix, Doug. I'll get her contact to you.
okay.
Um,
All right.
And if you have, I guess we should have the meeting first with the 9th and the 8th in Chemung and see what they're willing to do. Or at least find out from Chemung what they're willing to do. And then find out what, I like your approach that if we get so far and they can get so far, we get the state to take the rest of it. Especially if it's on their property.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I pattern it with the discussion with the 9th, is that the only way this ever gets done is through a collective, unless we did it all ourselves. The only way this ever gets done is by cooperation between the state and the 2 municipalities.
You want to finish your road program?
Yes. Also on the 18 program is to do Powell Place from the bridge to El Dorado, just a little bit past El Dorado, where about 15 years ago we did a section in there. And 10 years ago we did a series of sections to do the old dirt portion of Powell Place Road out there. And it's been about 12 years ago, we did a section from the bridge to Southampton. This section in here was put in about the same time Carranza was paved, in the late 70s, early 80s, in that time frame. I don't know if anybody remembers, this used to be just a little two-rut sand road that went down through there. And they got some housing developments were started up there, and they came out to a 2-rut sand road to come to town. So it was done in the late 70s, early 80s is what happened.
Because Fox Chase was built in 75 to 80, and they paved from the Southampton line up to Wimbledon. Right, or maybe they paved up to Fox Chase Friendship Road. And that sat as a dirt road in the 70s and early 80s, you're right, until you finally paved it in sections until you got to...
Well, Bruce was the foreman when they did that. It's when we had a number of pieces of heavy equipment, track loader, and the bulldozer we have now, and actually a track loader we sold 15 years ago to get our wheel loader. But that was all cleared in-house with Public Works employees, and then they went out to contract to pave it. All that gravel was hauled out of South Park gun clubs pits that were operational back then, and that was all gravel straightened, gravel widened, and done that by the Public Works Department back at that time.
So to answer Mr. Brooks' question about when that road was last paved, or whether it was Mrs. Brooks, one of them asked the question.
It was in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
About the same time they repaved
And actually,
Road.
it's when it was paved originally.
Yes.
It's never been repaved.
That was actually paid before Carranza.
Was it?
How was it?
So,
And it was paved over many years because it was done in sections. It was done up to the bridge, then it was done from the bridge down to El Dorado, then from El Dorado
to Powell, and then we did that in 1987 from El Dorado to Powell. That was the first road project I worked on when I came to work here. And then we did them in a series in the late 90s, early 2000s of DOT grants before we started on new road that would be out of bond ordinance 2017-10, pay for that. We have drainage improvements. We have a couple pipes to replace on Foranza Road. In the section we're looking about paving. We have zoning road drainage improvements, especially at 532, but there is 2 more spaces on zoning road that we drainage improvements on. And then we have Rural Road drainage improvements at the intersection of Kramer, Wynn, Hill, and also I've added Hawkins to take care of the water stands at that intersection. And you'll see that has went up slightly to $200,000. We have that out of bond ordinance 2015-10. The remainder is to work with Shimon to apply for 2019 DOT grants for Foranza Road. If this discussion with the 8th and 9th District and the Governor's Office works, then that will be limited. And that we continue to apply for grants if that doesn't work out, instead of paving just our half of it due to safety concerns. That would be my recommendation. These are the roads that were part of the 5-year plan that I gave you earlier last year. Mostly in the 2017 year completion.
So, a question for Doug or a comment, if and when Powell Place does get done, can the entire road be striped? Because it's striped now in Southampton, and it's not to the bridge where we are, it's very faded. And it will be with the new stuff, but then I think there's another stretch that's not. I think
I'd like to upgrade that to the reflectors in the center and do the whole length when we do that, when we do the contract to
well, whatever. I think
restripe and put that
safety
to the new standards. We started putting reflectors in the middle of our major roads about 5 years ago. So I'd like to update that at the same time.
Any other questions or comments on the road program? Everyone in favor? Mr. Kramer and Mr. Dozie can proceed with the road program that you presented.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. You're still up. Sale of township-owned property.
I had given you a list back in February of 5 properties that we had that we own, that we've had some interest on a few of them, and also the Myers property that we talked about foreclosing on the lien on that. But I want to talk about the first 5 first.
Okay.
I had Dan go out and take a look at the properties, see whether there are wetlands are involved in any of them, see whether we thought they were a buildable lot, which makes a difference on how we auction them, whether we set minimum prices or not. As you'll see, 10 Richter has no wetlands per the mapping site, but I do have a fairly large drainage easement at the triangular portion of the road where it meets Moore Road. We do have some runoff that goes probably, if you look at the map.
Doug, as you go over these for the public, could you give the address and the block and lot so that the public can follow at a later date if they need to?
Okay. The first one we're looking is 10 Richter Road. That's block 326, lot 8. It's located at the corner of Richter and Moore on the west side of the street. It's a triangular shaped lot. Which has a drainage, an inlet that comes out on the lower corner does flood back in on that lower portion of the lot. A distance of probably about, in the worst case scenario, probably 100 foot from the corner up that way. Mainly concentrated in that the narrow portion of the triangle portion of the lot. So that does have effect, but we, as Dan has pointed out in his report, soil boring would be needed to verify the depth of the seasonal high water table. We do own a lot across the street that we did this a number of years ago, and the seasonal high water table was somewhere around 4.5 feet at that time across the street. So I don't know how buildable the lot is, but that's something that we decide if we want to do boring, see whether it's what the property's worth, is whether it's a building lot or whether it's.
So we wouldn't be able to determine that without the soil boring, right?
Right.
So,
At the end of this, I'm going to ask for approval to send Dan
and
out.
then with that inlet, I believe you said you may need an easement on some of that property
Yes,
for that flooding?
yes. I need a drainage easement.
Okay.
It has an assessed value of $48,200.
The next one is, I'm going to talk about 67 Richter Road, Block 324, Lot 15. It's a 2-acre lot that was originally 2 1-acre lots in the original subdivision plan. And that appears to be dry, but again, to verify the borings you want to look at. This is the one we talked about subdividing it and going through the process of subdividing it, selling as 2 single-acre lots. Do you have a value on that one?
Yeah, did that get consolidated at some point if it was 2 separate lots on the tax map at one point?
I think it was purchased originally as a double lot because it has a in the original tax map it has a dotted line, which means they probably bought it originally that way or consolidated them at one time.
But there's the deed for the one lot, that's the one double lot and one deed.
Yeah. So my
Property jacket. So I talked to Dan and Dave Frank. You're looking at approximately plus or minus $3,850 in legal and professional fees to perform that subdivision. Ostensibly, it would get approved if it was demonstrated as could support the septic and so forth. So you'd have about just under $4,000 in hard costs associated with subdividing that. Presently, it has a assessed value of $46,000. The lots are probably worth in that neighborhood each, I suppose. But again, the township's talking about, speculating to some extent and expending these resources on the hope that it'll enhance the sale price. You also have the option of doing nothing and just auctioning them and seeing what prices are going to yield. So you'd have about just under 4,000, and you'd end up likely with 2 buildable lots out of 67 Richter Road, currently assessed at 46,000.
Okay, the next lot we're looking at is 32 Woodside Drive. That's an acre lot. That's Block 309, Lot 17. It's near the intersection of Ann and Woodside.
Assessed at 55,000.
Empty acre lot between 2 houses. We have 106 Fork Neck Road, Block 1401, Lot 2. It's approximately a 2-acre lot, probably only 1 buildable potential on that, and you'd need to know boring if you wanted to know where the seasonal high water is, but I'm going to guess You can look next to the pit and have a pretty good figure on where seasonal high water is. I don't know whether you need to do the boring or not. I would have to prefer Dan. Whether you feel comfortable selling it with water or without it.
Well, the issue is for the septic and with pond lands, you have to establish that you have at least 5 foot to seasonal high. So I think it's worth it to do it. The small cost of the boring to verify it, it's going to maximize your, or the alternative is to leave that up to the bidders if they want to go and do that, prior to the bid to verify for their own. So you can certainly do that as well.
We have had 2 parties over the years express interest in that lot.
Assessed at $73,200.
Goose Pond Road. We have blocks 1502, lot 5, and is the larger lot in the back, which has wetlands impact, likely no development on that piece. It's also recommended we have 3 lots adjacent to lot 5, 4.01, 4.02, 4.03. I'd recommend trying to sell them together. They're all wetlands lots or can't support house of within reason. There may be some high ground on lot 5 in the back, but you have to cross wetlands to get to it. So
It's assessed at lot 5, $33,100, and 401, 402, 403 are $4,000, $4,300, and $5,900 respectively.
okay.
Doug, is that 20.49 acre piece, is that that's all the gun club, isn't it? Second page of the packet. Second page of the packet, the cable packet. Never mind, that's right. The 20.49 acre piece. The lots you want to liquidate are 401, 402, 403, right?
Yes.
Those 3 that are highlighted?
Yes.
My question is, the owner that's behind that, 20.49 acres, if that's the...
That may be Rosedale
Okay.
Gun Club.
That's actually not owned by Rosedale Gun Club, it's owned by another landowner,
Okay.
which is on the tax rolls, but it's very complicated.
Is that where Rosedale is, right there, Steve?
Well, that's where Rosedale is, but Rosedale, they own the building, but then the landowner that has the 20 acres the building sits on, they have an agreement with Rosedale. So the only ones that would it would make sense to buy would be that it's a foundation out of Philadelphia that has it.
Okay.
My point is that those 3 lots would be difficult to liquidate, I think, because of the wetlands issues, but I don't even think that a lot behind is going to be a viable candidate, but anyway.
Go ahead. Is that all wet?
This piece is here, yeah.
Okay, if you want to talk about the 1540 Route 206, block 324, lot 5.
That's the Myers property out on 206. It has a assessed value of $69,000. And has quite a bit of liens on the property. That was a property that was demolished and cleaned up right on 206. An assessed value of $69,000, could be sold subject to the liens.
And that had a house on it at one time, a house and a garage.
And again, that would be a circumstance that if the township committee wanted to establish a minimum bid or otherwise put it out there and see what it would yield, that's fine. If it became necessary to entice some buyers, and you were gonna accept less than the lien, you'd have to advertise it as such, just like you just did for the Long Street property.
So what I'm looking for tonight to move these forward is to do the perk tests and get an idea of which way the committee wants to go and whether they're subdividing 67 Richter Road or leaving it as a 2-acre lot.
So Doug, we need a survey to do that. Do you have a cost of what it would cost to do the borings on 1, 2, 3, 4 properties?
It's be a couple $100 a lot.
Okay.
Borings. And the borings, again, it's up to the committee. The only one that we would be required to do is we need to do the boring for the subdivision. We need to go through Pineland's approval for that. The others, it would just be good information for potential buyer of the property. However, you can, leave that on a potential buyer.
Did, my experience, I'm more concerned about yours. By doing the borings, the better information you get a better price,
Yes.
right?
This is not a good time of year to do the borings.
Doesn't matter.
It's moral.
Seasonal hot. It's modeling.
It's modeling.
It's top secret engineering stuff.
I've been down this.
So should we wait or should we do the borings?
It does not matter.
It doesn't matter.
We're not looking for water, we're looking for the water table, evidence of water. It's identified in the soils.
Okay.
And I'd like to establish with Dan where we think the easement needs to be on lot 10.
Okay.
So we can have that available for when the bidders.
Okay, let's deal with 67 Richter first, which is the one. Should we subdivide that before we sell that?
Pineland's gonna allow that, do you think?
We won't know until we
We're
try.
always looking at 3.2.
We won't know till we try. It's in development with other 1-acre lots, so it's possible, but it's certainly not a guarantee.
Well, the argument is it's baked into the cake. They've never been challenged on that. My point of view is it's baked into the cake. Those subdivisions were made years ago. Those lot dimensions and that density was calculated years ago. They want to now come back and establish a requirement to have a higher standard than that which was existed when it was originally approved. I think they have some trouble in doing that, but I guess we won't know until we get a certificate of file.
Give it a try.
That would be the first thing that we would do. So, all of that 3,800 and change would not even be nearly spent before the Pinelands issue would be resolved. Because, Dan would have to prepare a subdivision plan, do soil borings, we get a submission to the Pinelands and see what they said, and go from there before it even went to the long land development board.
So we wouldn't necessarily survey doing that.
We have to do the survey to Pineland for that.
Have we had a discussion at all with Pinelands about subdividing that lot?
I've not had a discussion yet, because we haven't been authorized to move forward with it, but we would have a discussion with Pinelands prior to applying, but they're gonna say we'll make the application and we'll review it.
How many acres is that?
2 acres.
Let's try 2 or 3.
2 acres.
Well, you don't bother, you don't take any chances, and you just see what you can get for it.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to subdivide it. I'm not sure we don't, but I think at the very least,
You leave it up to the bidder,
yeah,
take the risk.
yeah.
We looked into that because Mr. Yates asked us to look into it. So, that's why we went down this route.
So 10 Richter, you wanted to do soil ones.
You're going to do 10 Richter,
Right,
106 Fork Neck,
right.
37 Woodside,
38 37
Or
Woodside,
32.
32 Woodside, right?
32
Okay.
And 67, you gotta decide whether you're gonna do it in one place or two.
So you could do all the soils, have that feedback for the bidders, and then just put it out and see what people do with that information, and not take any chances of time and delay with respect to the subdivision. Just give the bidders the results of the test pits and the
Yeah, just give them the soil boring information that they could use as a.
right.
And on 10 Richter, we've actually surveyed already because we have to make sure that we reserve out an easement on that property for drainage.
10 Richter.
So we can provide a survey for the bidders as well, showing that easement so they'll know the extent of it.
You good, Rick?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
You good?
Okay, Doug, move forward.
Good. That's all I have. Noah, do you want to talk about the Myers property separately?
I'm sorry?
You want to talk about the Myers property 1540?
Yes, yeah, that's why you got up to talk about it.
Or do you want to look into selling the lien?
Just put it up to bid, you know, and we can fashion it in such a way that if they accept a price that's less, then they can accept that and do the sale. And they're giving away their own tax lien, so you can just put it up to bid as municipally owned land. You don't have to sell the tax certificate. You know, you're not selling the tax certificate, you're selling the land. You already own it because there is a tax sale certificate out there. So you can handle it in the same process and see what price it yielded and decide whether or not to accept it, because you're going to have to do that with each and every property.
You okay with that? Steve, you all right? Okay, yeah, proceed. With the agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, special events, function rate permit.
Ordinance, I redrafted that ordinance. I fashioned it as a replacement for the current parade ordinance. I took the highlights of the parade ordinance, reconciled any inconsistencies, made a $75 application fee applicable to all except those that are exempt, which are the churches and so forth, and that's specifically listed in there. And then blended the requirements for the parade issues, or some uses in the parade ordinance that were repetitive, redundant as to what was already included in the special events. So I carved them out and then treated the parade, otherwise the parade uses as a separate special event, and then made the entire ordinance applicable to both with a $75 application fee, and just reconciled them so that, they would be, when you repealed and replaced, it would be a functional combination of the two ordinances.
Any comments from the committee on this?
I'm assuming there would be no fee for the rec committee sponsored activities, correct?
Correct. If you look at the language, there is an exemption.
Are you kidding me? No.
I move we put this on the agenda for.
This just gives us an opportunity to fine tune a little bit before we get there.
Mr. Franz, in page 2, where it says special event does not include, would you carve out anything sponsored by the township or otherwise? And again, that language actually comes from the parade ordinance. So if you have any other comments or concerns, they can be raised between now and a introduction at the next meeting. And then you can consider its introduction at that time. And any questions or concerns I'll incorporate into any final final draft that's proposed for introduction. Otherwise, it'll come back to you in this form that it is here now.
The comment I had, Peter, and I see you have the application fee of $75, so be submitted with the application. And then when you go under D7, if a special event occurs periodically or more than once per year, I think there should be a lesser fee to cover a second time, because it does require the township to look at it again, to revisit again, and all these have to go in front of the OEM coordinator for review. So I think it should be $75, or if D7 applies, each occurrence per year, for that calendar year, an additional whatever number to cover our cost. And Dustin will tell you better what that cost is.
All right, I'll get Doug a number from Doug, and we'll include a reduced fee for those that are recurring events, which implies that there'd be less review involved because it's a recurring situation.
Other than that, I think you did a nice job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, reports. Our OEM coordinator is not here. Did our CERT member have a comment on emergency management?
Everything's going okay. They had their meeting. John Lyons is keeping things ticking along until we fill the positions are.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, Mr. Cozy?
The only thing that we haven't discussed tonight is the traffic study that we're doing on New Road for the speed limit that is underway, and we hope to have a report to you next month.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer, do you have enough to say tonight, or would you have more?
A little more.
I was invited to the Tabernacle Rescue Squad's recognition dinner on Saturday, and just want to thank them for a very nice event, and wish them the best this year. Our brush schedule is moving along. We are about between 2 and 3 weeks behind right now. We are working in section 2, which is west of east of Carranza Road. We should be finishing that up by the end of the week and moving into the other side of the highway probably next week sometime, and hope to have this completed sometime before Memorial Day.
Doug, where do we stand with the analysis of the brush that Mayor Martin had asked to have done?
We kept a log last year, our last fall collection, and we are keeping a log this year.
For this one? We're doing it now?
Yeah. And once we finish that, we'll put a report together for a total year where we're at.
I'm just going to share with you real briefly. I'm going to have a hard time. I'm glad you took the initiative to look at this. I followed someone from Southampton this week with a trailer load of brush and dumped it at a house in Tabernacle Friday afternoon. Yep.
Do you have the street address of where they dumped it, and
I do.
will you share
Which I
that
can
with me?
certainly provide it to you. Sure.
Okay. Appreciate that. We had an EGF inspection this past week, which we passed at a score of 94, which we continue to maintain over the last few years. Very pleased with that. Dan and I are working on the stormwater report, which is due the beginning of next week for this year. And I'm also working on the recycling report for 2017, which is due at the same time. We had a POSHA inspection a couple weeks ago. We had some minor infractions which we are addressing. We had some training we had to get caught up on. 2 of us have done it. We have 2 more to go through in May, and we will meet that standard. We also participated in the 27th annual safety celebration at the GIF. We were given a Safety Excellence Award for 2017, and Lisa Love was given a Special Recognition Award for her job as claims coordinator and the excellent program that she has provided the township. We had Hazardous Waste Collection Day this past Saturday. We had over 76 residents come in and leave material. We have 2 full trucks to take up to hazardous waste tomorrow morning, and we will be complete with that. So it was a successful day for that. And that's all I have, Mayor.
You want to talk about Ms. Love's award next week that she's going to receive?
You can.
Okay. Peter, you're up.
Mayor, the only other thing I have is we did get a letter some weeks ago from an Aaron Moore who has a property which is straddles the township line between Chemung and Tabernacle out by Carranza Road. He wrote the letter asking if the township would consider vacating the right-of-way associated with Tucker Road, right? It's Tucker Road.
Yes.
Which connects with a road along his property. Well, we looked into that to see what the situation was, and it was determined that really that they constructed an outbuilding, it appears, in the right-of-way. And it appears to be a historic condition that's existed for some period of time. I spoke to Doug in an effort to sort of ascertain legally where we're at with this. And the best I can surmise with a cursory investigation is that that right-of-way was established by stagecoaches, and so I'm pretty sure that's a firmly established right-of-way. And you discussed that with me, Doug?
Yeah. What has happened since the building was probably built in the, I'm going to guess the 50s or early 60s, is that portion of the road turns out behind that across the neighbor's property and has for 50 years, but we don't technically own the right-of-way where it comes out.
Somewhere along the line, the house or structure of the outbuilding, it's an accessory building to the principal residence there, was constructed a long time ago in the right-of-way of Tucker Road. And so they then began to make a right over private property to access Carranza Road. Okay, and in discussing it with Doug, there is a legitimate public safety issue to have that through street, one or the other, because the current way they do it now is over private property. I'm going to suspect that was done when the right-of-way was blocked, and so it's a historic issue that's existed for some time. My initial belief is that you can't build a building in the right-of-way. Doug's concerned about eliminating any and all access there, whether the private property owner would object and create an issue if you were to vacate the right-of-way and secede to the existing condition that's been created by probably somebody long gone. Because otherwise the emergency vehicles would come to a dead end potentially there.
There's a large block of woods in Chemung Township that's behind all the few houses that are in Tabernacle. And it gives the Forest Fire Service access now. Forest Fire Service really doesn't need a road to get through most of the time, but it does make it a little quicker and it does make it a little easier. To have that there, the other thing is Tuckerton Road is divided down the middle between Chemung and Tabernacle, so both townships would have to decide whether to give up the right or not. And my concern is that we eliminate that access unless we gain the access to the neighboring property.
And Doug, you said we're using the neighbor's property now?
The road was created long before I came along out across the neighbor's property.
Okay, so we're trespassing on someone's private property without their permission.
Or we've used a right-of-way and have a common law right-of-way to it at this point in time.
It's not settled by the record, that's the problem. So my suggestion would be for Doug to speak to Shimon and advise them of the circumstances, get their opinions concerning the need for the right-of-way, because it's their resident also, and see if there's a common way forward to resolve it one way or another. And again, this is precipitated by Mr. Moore's letter to the township saying, hey, you know, your right-of-way is trespassing on my property here.
And it's the other way around.
Well, it is a historic accident, so.
Is there the possibility that the finance commission should be involved with this because this is a historic part, a historic road? I know, you know, any property that's older than 50 years old, you can't tear it down unless they approve. I wonder if they would have any concern that something's been built on this historic road. Maybe not.
Well, it's probably 20 or 30 years before they came into existence. It was established. And the problem is the lot was fine when it was all connected with the lot in Shimon, but the lot's now been separated between, he doesn't own the house anymore. So, the property owner that owned both the house and the garage sold them separate.
How's that possible? They subbed it?
Different townships.
But still, the lot can be in two different townships.
The lot has a lot and block in Shimon that takes care of the house. There's a lot and block for that building in Tabernacle.
So he sold an accessory building, a garage associated with a house, to be used separately.
Accessory building, a permitted use
Without a primary structure? No.
Sure.
30 years ago, who knows?
Yeah.
Well, it had a primary structure in a neighboring town, so I mean,
When did they sell the garage separately from the house?
I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago.
Someone living in the garage?
Previous owners.
Is there enough room along the public right-of-way with the garage to accomplish access through there or not?
No, the right-of-way across that piece of property actually runs through the garage.
Okay.
Fellas, I recommend that we table this until we have the other two committee members here to discuss it.
Okay.
At 10:15, I'm not really sure I care who's sold what, to be honest with you. Just to have the public source to comment. I'd rather listen to
We'll pick this up next meeting.
Maybe Doug could see what Shimon's thoughts are.
Yeah, give Doug a chance to talk to Shimon.
I will talk to Shimon about it.
Okay. Anything else, Peter? Committee Franklin?
It's late and we're going to move on.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, I just have a few things. Just a reminder, May 8th and 15th at the Emergency Service Building, there will be a boating safety course offered by the Coast Guard. If anyone needs a boating certificate, a good opportunity to get it. And also our Memorial Day Parade will be Saturday, May 26th at 10 a.m. And we look forward to everyone being here. Mark Revere's not here, or he made that announcement. And the only other thing I had to report is that tonight I was at a meeting of the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. They're conducting 5 public sessions throughout the state on the storm response of the local utilities in the state of New Jersey. And they're looking at 100 storm protocols and how to improve reliability and storm response. And tonight's meeting was down in Winslow Township. They have one more meeting to go. And then they'll take the recommendations and talk with utilities and hopefully be able to come up with a way to improve them protocols. That's all I have. Public comment?
Mayor, I have one thing I need to add. I apologize. If I may. As most of you know, I've been working on trying to break fires to Tabernacle areas that don't have it. I had a meeting with a conference call with Sylvia Del Vecchio and Jennifer Young last Wednesday. We submitted, and I say we, the community submitted 60 applications to Verizon, 40 of which I'm pretty certain are solid applications. And at this point, they're still reviewing the applications, but I've got another conference call scheduled in 2 weeks. I will tell you that, and you think about what you brought up the BPU, at some point, I'm going to give a nice report to this body regarding my experiences with Verizon in terms of trying to work to bring fiber to this area. There's a lot of opportunities that we have in front of us, which sometimes aren't as easy as they should be in dealing with utility. But I just want to give the folks that did submit an application an update. I have a conference call scheduled with 2 weeks from this past Wednesday, so hopefully we'll hear something soon. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, and your call for Stephen. Okay, public comment. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Stuart Brooks. I'll be brief. I want to follow up on Mr. Franzen's comment regarding the historic right-of-way problem that we were just discussing. My follow-up is that again, that is an historic right-of-way. So I would think that factor would be a component of whatever solution is reached, especially given the fact that at first blush it would seem that one should not build a private building in a public right-of-way. We'll see where the equities and the facts go. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Comment, Mrs. Brooks?
Graham Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. I'm a little bit surprised that you could make an appointment, an appointment outside of a public meeting. And I have to wonder about the legalities of that. My second question is, are all 501c3s going to be exempt from the special events ordinance? I'd like to return to the balanced billing. First of all, Southampton Township, it's my understanding that Southampton Township does do in-kind, does an in-kind contribution for their balanced billing, and so if you haven't already looked into that, that would be valuable. Also, there's a little bit of revisionist history occurring here in discussion earlier about that opinion, but I can tell you that it is my understanding that at least Medford and Evesham, they make a good faith effort to collect the balance of the insurance billings. If they don't get those monies, they write them off, and the feds have allowed that to happen. They've been doing it for quite a few years. It's not a problem to do it. It isn't that complicated either. It's just changing the arrangements around a little bit. And I think it is time, and I appreciate your comments, Mayor, about making certain changes to help us out, because it's a little bit galling as a resident that the TRS can talk about building surplus. I mean, Jamie Wood talked about that a couple of times in public meetings, while our surplus is being decimated or it's declining, and we have to work so hard in order to put more money into it, in order to support the township. So as far as, the squad goes, they're collecting surplus while our surplus is declining, and that's a little bit hard to take. The last issue has to do with Carranza Road. I don't know what to say about your comment, Deputy Mayor, regarding doing the entire road. I haven't thought about that. But when you think about, if you're going to consider doing from Tuckerton down through Wilkinson, consider that there are only a couple of, maybe 3 residents on that north side, and they're within maybe 20 feet. I mean, Mr. Guzzi would be more particular, and I haven't gone out to measure it, but it's very clear that they don't have very far to go in order to get on to the good pavement, whereas we on Moores Meadow Road are driving a mile, 1 mile, full mile, to get to the good pavement, while those people on the north side only have a few feet to go. And there should be some consideration given to that. It's fairly unfair. It's really unfair. This has been going on. This is another failure of government. I mean, it's been, 35 years that nobody has focused on Carranza Road. And now, only because of our continuous efforts and some of the efforts of other residents talking to various people on this committee, that it's now there's interest in doing Carranza Road. And maybe that's good, and I appreciate your efforts, I do, because we wouldn't be here today if you weren't doing it, because obviously our protestations haven't mattered much over the years. But the fact remains that I think Moores Meadow residents who pay a fair amount of taxes, big farmers pay a fair amount of taxes, should be given consideration in terms of where the application of our money goes, right from the get-go. So, appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Staying up, close the public portion. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?